All right.
Okay, welcome to School for Course in Miracles. And as always, thanks to Tim and Lynn for providing this wonderful forum for all of us helping each other learn A Course in Miracles and go home together. So anyway, always appreciated. Tonight, I thought it'd be fun to talk about going beyond our ego's mad careers. This was sort of a topic that was being explored the other day, and in very brief session. And I thought, well, this actually merits a lot of consideration, and it seems sort of timely for me, and maybe for other people who are in that sort of retirement age, where the career, if you will, of having a livelihood in the world is either soon to be transitioning, or in the middle of transitioning, or already transitioning. But the course, of course, talks about careers in a different light, and what our real function is, of course, is forgiveness. So that's kind of what we're going to be coming from. So I wrote a few things here, and so I just kind of titled this, Mad Careers, Conforming to Non-Conformity, and the Desolation of Distinctions. So I'm just going to read a little bit of the writing that I did. So stop me at any time, of course, if anything comes to mind that might be pertinent. When I was an adolescent, I couldn't figure out how to fit into the world, and I fanned the "there must be a better way" idea from spark to a flame. Thoughts along these twisted lines continued the existing ego mental progression from the terrible twos, already a big clue about the tyranny of dualistic thinking, into so-called adulthood. Ken Wapnick reminds us that we're all spiritual infants, and nowhere in A Course in Miracles does the author refer to us as adults. This is actually a tremendous blessing, since if our minds, I'll speak for myself at least, if my mind were close to maturity, then I'd be in serious trouble. Our divided minds are a toxic waste dump of a plethora of permutations of the sin, guilt, fear thought system. But fortunately, these fantasies have had zero destructive impact on our real, purely non-dual identity. This fits nicely with a favorite course quote: "If this were the real world, God would be cruel." So one form that the timid and occasional better way, in quotes, exploration took during my high school years was to read many of the metaphysical books in my mother's ever-expanding library, rather than conforming to the more normal teenage pursuits. I, quote, prided myself on being, quote, different too, and one day, in amused horror, I realized that I was conforming to non-conformity. Oh no, just another authority problem instigated by a rebellious thought system wanting to be different. So what's the core of this desperate struggle we all seem to have to be different, to distinguish our, quote, selves, unquote, from the other, quote, other selves, unquote, out there? We think that as long as we can maintain uniqueness of personality and a set of defining characteristics, we can then project our unconscious, unfounded guilt onto everyone else, and that will somehow work. It never does, but that's the last thing any self-disrespecting ego ever wants to consider. The Course reminds us of our incessant preoccupation with fabricating a fraudulent identity, or as Ken Wapnick says, the maladaptive solution to the non-existent problem. And of course, this is the crux for all of us here, and I'm now quoting from chapter 31, section 5, paragraph 17. "I do not know the thing I am, and therefore do not know what I am doing, where I am, or how to look upon the world or on myself." So, regardless of our life situation, whatever phase of life we think we're in or whatever, we're all doing various, variations on that as egos, right? We're just thrashing around, trying to figure out which end is up. And not really having a clue of when we're on our own. That's why we need Holy Spirit's help with everything. So this obsession takes countless forms, and some of them are culture-specific, age-specific, gender-specific, and so on, but they're all silly and forgivable, yet must be seen with Holy Spirit's vision to be forgiven and released. One way to slice and dice our intrinsic unity, or seem to, is to define our livelihood or career as a primary way of keeping our identity apart from other identities. Of course, our real career is forgiving all apparent distinctions, but our ego won't have any of that. So I'm going to quote from the one place in the course where the word career appears, and this is in workbook lesson 298. I'm just going to read the whole lessons because it's short. My gratitude permits my love to be accepted without fear. In fact, why don't we do this as a meditation? So if you want to sit back and relax, close your eyes, and we'll just let this sink in. My gratitude permits my love to be accepted without fear, and thus am I restored to my reality at last. All that intruded on my holy sight, forgiveness takes away, and I draw near the end of senseless journeys, mad careers, and artificial values. I accept instead what God establishes as mine, sure that in that alone I will be saved, sure that I go through fear to meet my love. Father, I come to you today because I would not follow any way but yours. You are beside me. Certain is your way, and I am grateful for your holy gifts of certain sanctuary and escape from everything that would obscure my love for God, my Father, and his Holy Son. Okay, gently come back and we'll dive in a bit more. Any comments or questions so far?
I sort of said I liked it when you called us toxic waste dumps. Not really, but I thought it was a great title. and then how we try to distinguish my toxic waste dump from Dave's, like like I want to see a difference between my toxic waste and Dave's toxic waste. Well, the two key words are they're both toxic and they're both waste.
Right.
But mine's more distinguished than Dave's.
Or extinguished at some point, right?
Yeah.
We're all heading toward that on the ego's bandwagon, right?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we try to distinguish it in so many different ways. I'm just going to read just a little bit more and then dive into some of the specifics that might be helpful. So, any special love or special hate relationship we have with specifics in this world may describe our mad career with ego addiction. However, with help from our inner kindness teacher, we don't need to change jobs or anything in the level of form, just unlearn ego's misinterpretation of projected guilt and allow the intrinsic innocence to shine through. Our real career, our sole responsibility, our task, our assignment, our focus, our gift, our challenge, our function is to accept the atonement for ourself. This is a gift from our seemingly separate self to our real all-inclusive self. It's invoking our decision maker to give ourselves what we always wanted. So I just started making a list of words that kind of related to those, and I kind of put a few of them in that paragraph. Career, there's only actually one there, and that was one I just read. Function. Now there's 459 instances of the word function. So, and I put in next to that, I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that our function is forgiveness. And then responsibility, there's 99 instances of that word. Task, 45. Job and obligation are none, which is kind of oftentimes how we think about, our work in the world. I didn't put work in there. Oh, I'll have to look that one up. Duty, there's only one. Assignment, there's 43. Now, gift, thinking of it as actually a joyous responsibility rather than a burden, there's 574. And then exchange, which is oftentimes what people think in terms of, I go to work, so I get this, I barter or exchange, our job, so to speak. There's 78 instances of the word exchange and 6 of glad exchange. So it's like, that's kind of a good clue. It's like, if we're happy to give up what we don't want for what we do, which is insanity for sanity, it's like, that's a good clue. There's 34 instances of focus, 68 of achievement, 176 of accomplishment, and 18 of contribution. So I thought these are just, a handful of words that could relate to, what we think of as our livelihood or our career and the world. But, how does that translate into what the course is talking about? And of course, it'd be easy to get into level confusion to think that, oh, I can't do X, Y, and Z job in the world because my real career is forgiveness. So I have to, as some people have tried, take a sabbatical and quit my job and, go read the course 24/7 or be in a monastery or something like that. Just, the course doesn't ask us to do that.
So take a guess on how many times work's in there.
17.
104.
104. Oh,
You
cool.
add
I'm gonna add that to it.
Did you include workers and working and?
I just put work, and so there's various forms showed up within
104.
that.
Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
The verb form, the noun form, works. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add this to what I've been reading here. Yeah, cool.
Lisa did a partial thing on function on Saturday.
Yeah, well, I was thinking yesterday that this really fits in nicely because it really dovetails with what you shared yesterday really nicely. Yep, very much so. Yeah, thank you. So, just to reiterate, in this world, we as egos, we try to distinguish ourselves with both positive and negative accomplishments. Kind of like 2-year-olds don't care what kind of attention they get as long as they get attention, right? So, and for all 2-year-olds, from the course's perspective, we're still doing it, and just kind of notice it and say, oh yeah, there I go again, and just without condemning ourselves, just say, oh, I must be wanting attention as a separate self instead of the real attention of Holy Spirit recognizing our real identity that's all shared. Yeah. So in the positive category, we hope to get acknowledgement for achievements that point to our separate selves, the heroes of each of our dreams in arenas like these, all of which were taken. Oh, and then in arenas like these, I started making a list. For some reason, I ran across something I made some years ago when I was doing job searches. I made kind of a master resume because for different jobs I was looking into, they would want different requirements. And so I would make, it's kind of a list of everything. So I could kind of cherry pick the things that I'd done that kind of related to that job. And I'd, make a resume that was tailored to that opening. So these are just the categories of things that I have in this master resume that I made, I don't know, some years ago. It's about 7 pages long. Summaries, and then I just put little quotes and comments in parentheses. Our elevator speeches about how wonderful our dream hero action figure is. Skills, including fluency in applying the tools of our trades that make us special. Professional experience, and that's usually where most resumes go on and on. So I put unmercifully long accounts of our mad careers. Education, another category of pride. We can take in things that we think we understand, and then the appropriate quote for that I put underneath here is, "You're still convinced that your understanding is a powerful contribution to the truth that makes it what it is." I've always liked that one. The humor in that is not lost. Publications, websites, online profiles, social media, volunteer and community activities, awards, honors, licenses, certifications, exhibits, interviews, media, kudos, travel, hobbies, personal interest, and residence history. And then in parentheses on that one, identifying where I'm from or where I lived, worked, studied, but all those things are just things that make differences real. And there's nothing wrong with any of them if we take them, unless we take them seriously, right? because all those things we need to navigate in the world. You know, if someone said, you know, where have you been in your life, and you just saw, oh no, I mean, we would just kind of, I don't know. It's interesting to just kind of go through some of these categories and say, see, how much of those things am I attached to, and how much can I look at with a smile and say, yeah, and that doesn't make any difference in truth, because everybody has their own stories, and they're all unique, and they're all different. But
I'm surprised it was only 7 pages long.
well,
Mine's
that was
72 years long, for God's sake.
that was a very terse, abbreviated version, right? But yeah, but it's interesting though, you know, that and those are all things that we're trying to leverage, you know, and convince other people that I was, you know, worth bringing on for whatever the task or the function, the project was, right? So, but it's interesting that, you know, we actually, you know, revel in the things that seem to make us different, and yet those are the very things that, when in retrospect, oftentimes make us miserable, at least when we're attached to them. You know?
I was thinking next time we're at a party and, you know, somebody has always said, well, what do you do? Or what did you do? You just say, well, I forgive.
Yeah. Might be a smidge of level confusion there, but it would be interesting to try at least in
the conversation immediately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I forgive.
Exactly. Oh, I'm accepting the atonement. That's my current career move. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
What is Stephen's friends? What was your friend's name, Stephen? Ben. He would always say, "Oh, what do you do with Jesus?" And he says, "Oh, I just tell him I love him. I love Jesus." What's your career? Well, I tell Jesus I love him.
Yeah. Anyway, Ben, almost certainly in the real world, a really dear friend, kind of took me under his wing. He left with the COVID, which I think happens pretty quickly sometimes with real world people. But just a wonderful guy. And I asked him, I looked him in the eye real seriously one day, and I did this with him every once in a while the whole time I knew him. And I said, all right, man, tell me, what do you do? And he said, what do you mean, what do I do? What do you do? How are you doing this? You're peaceful all the time. What do you do? And he said, well, I tell Jesus I love him twice a day. And every once in a while, he tells me, I love you too, Ben. Isn't that nice?
Mm-hmm. That's an unmad career. Or undoing the mad career at very least. Huh? Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And we don't have to limit it just twice a day, you know, it's the recommended daily allowance maybe, but yeah, good stuff. Well, I wrote a little bit more, and then I thought we'd go into a couple of sections that in the course. And I actually took what we did this last summer with all the identity examination exercises for that workshop we did, and pasted it all in here. So I'll, if you want, you can look at it later on. I'll send the link around, but but I think it's interesting just kind of look at all that stuff and just see how easy it is to just go down that rabbit hole. And then, but we need Holy Spirit's help to say, what if that's not important? What if my investment in that at least is, you know, if I can just drop it like I, you know, throw an old sock or an old shoe or, you know, old whatever in the trash or the recycle bin. So anyway, that phrase, I need do nothing, you know, I think is real helpful. So yeah, a couple more paragraphs of comments here, and then we can dive into that section here. This isn't a suggestion that we drop our livelihoods, worldly ambitions, or anything that reflects normal self-care, self-preservation, and attention to caring for one's home, family, community, culture, country, planet, etc. But the Course does suggest that prioritizing these ambitions in our mind at the expense of our peace constitutes needless suffering A phrase and section of the text familiar to almost every course student is, I need do nothing. So we'll dive into that in a few minutes. However, the emphasis might be properly placed on the word need, since neediness is an obvious giveaway clue that the ego has been meddling with our mind if we succumb once again to the tyranny of needs. And I know some of you probably listened to that Ken Wapnick title with that name lately, which is quite good. As always, gentle vigilance with Holy Spirit's help to avoid level confusion is a must, and will become easier over time as we notice that we can still do everything we, quote, need, unquote, to attend to in the world, but with the gentle, more frequent smile, and actually a wider range of choices when not constrained by ego's insistence on a narrow scope of outcomes. We can, with Holy Spirit's help, metaphorically chew gum and walk. We can become more mindfully forgiving and do whatever is needed in the world without insisting that the world or our lifestyle or others around us change. And then I was thinking, you know, there are changes required in the life situation of God's teachers is another pertinent section, which I won't read now, but that's such a, it's pretty short, but it's a really good one for avoiding level confusion. It's like, no, you don't have to change the world. Just change how we think about it. As always, right? So to make an assessment of where we've tried and may still be trying to use ego thinking to manipulate the world with our mad careers and artificial values, it's often helpful to notice how many specifics we identify with as defining our identity, both successes and failures, which the Course reminds us we as egos have no real basis for evaluating. And I love this. I'm going to read the whole paragraph, but the last couple of sentences or so. So telling, which it kind of ties into the, you know, our basis for judgment is essentially nil, but this says it in a little different way. This is from chapter 18, section 5. Prepare you now for the undoing of what never was. If you already understood the difference between truth and illusion, the atonement would have no meaning. The holy instant, the holy relationship, the Holy Spirit's teaching, and all the means by which salvation is accomplished would have no purpose, for they are all but aspects of the plan to change your dreams of fear to happy dreams from which you waken easily to knowledge. Put yourself not in charge of this, for you cannot distinguish between advance and retreat. Some of your greatest advances you have judged as failures, and some of your deepest retreats you have evaluated as success. And thinking about that for a moment, I was thinking, gee, what my master resume would look like if I put all the things that I think are my retreats and failures. That'd be an interesting synopsis, wouldn't it? Yeah. Might be an interesting exercise, you know. Of course, we need Holy Spirit, especially for that self-evaluation, to not go into a self-condemning exercise. So anyway, and then I just put, you know, here's some suggestions given as a self-evaluation identity workshop that might be helpful in examining the minutiae of ego obsessions as we define our career successes and failures, and you know, take note of the myriad of ways. Ideally, enlisting our inner kindness teacher support while reviewing these without condemnation. We maintain the belief in separation by insisting on these stories about ourselves that make us unique, special, distinguished, and notorious either for good or bad results, but always different from others in our physical lives, a reflection of wanting to be different from our Creator, back to that ontological authority problem. And there's a bunch of these, whole slew of categories that I won't read right now because it would take too long. But anyway, there's a bunch of different, you know, all kind of like that wheel of misfortune that Jeff Siebert had, and I know you and Tim and Lynn have employed that very well, and so many classes. Just kind of, you know, all the different categories of things that occupy our attention and minds, and really we think make up our identity, but they're all made up. They're all artificial and fabrications.
How about this for a title? All my careers were detours.
Yeah.
They're all detours. Everything on the wheel of misfortune was a detour.
All those horizontal, tangents that we took. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And the Holy Spirit just says, well, there's this vertical door that you haven't explored, and there's a rope ladder hanging down, and there's a hand at the top to help you up through the hole in the ceiling. Yeah, exactly. So I thought it would be good to reread the I need do nothing section. And that is on page 388 in the English 3rd edition. And talk about it because I think it fits pretty nicely with this topic about the need to do stuff. and I mean, I certainly can relate to, you know, this sort of compulsive, oh, I got to get so much done this day and then the next day and so on. And you know, kind of our modern culture is sort of obsessed with that. But it's just kind of fun to just watch and see when it becomes a frenetic thing and when it's like, oh, what if I just do whatever I'm doing, but do it with the Holy Spirit? And then it's like, oh, it takes all the angst and the anxiety and the craziness out of it. Yeah.
For what it's worth, when Jesus said, I need do nothing, he didn't include, he had a couple of exceptions. One of them for Beth and for Javiera. One of them was the immersion. Certain people need to do certain things. She's like, yeah. That's good.
Yeah. There are very few exceptions, so yeah, generally, yeah. Yep. So any volunteer for the first paragraph? Is everybody there on chapter 18, section 7, paragraph 1? I need do nothing. Let's see. Lisa, would you like to read?
Sure.
Okay.
I need do nothing. You still have too much faith in the body as a source of strength. What plans do you make that do not involve its comfort or protection or enjoyment in some way? This makes the body an end and not a means in your interpretations. And this always means you still find sin attractive. No one accepts atonement for himself who still accepts sin as his goal. You have thus not met your one responsibility. Atonement is not welcomed by those who prefer pain and destruction.
So who do you think he's talking about there?
I,
Those who prefer pain and destruction. Moi?
I don't prefer pain and destruction.
Yeah.
No.
At least on paper, right? We don't.
No, my mind does not. I'm sure my ego still thinks it's important, and sin is real, and all of that. But that one line, no one accepts atonement for himself who still accepts sin as his goal. So I don't know. That's pretty intense.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a quick comment, then I'll get your response, Dave. I was just thinking, what if we were to replace body with livelihood or career or task or whatever? You have still too much faith in the job that I think I have, the whatever I think I'm doing that's important in the world as a source of strength, and then jump down to sentence 4. No one accepts atonement or peace for himself or herself who still accepts separation, specialness, substitution as his goal.
Yeah, sin is a hard word for me. Yeah.
Anyway.
So that's good. I don't have a thing about my job. I never did. It's just something I kind of had to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm retired now, happily, very, very, very happily retired. So for me, it would be, I guess, my special relationships. That would be my substitution,
Yeah. Because when before and after in the world career, there's still a career going on in the world. It's just it takes a whole bunch of different forms. I think that's
right.
That's kind of the point of this exercise, is just noticing how much identity investment we have in the things that we do and the things that we prefer. I mean, it can be as simple as, oh, I like this restaurant over that restaurant,
There you go.
and you know, almost getting into an argument over it at times, you know, whatever. Let alone sports teams, political parties, you know, the list goes on and on, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, Dave.
And then after all of that, he has this sentence number 5 here. You have thus not met your one responsibility. Rubbing a little salt, aren't we? Jeez.
Really? Yeah, I was thinking that the old cliche thing. You had one job.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
And what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like the wizard coming back and the you know, the Sorcerer's Apprentice. There's like the whole damn, you know, magician's lab is flooded here. What happened here? You know,
I give you one thing to do.
Exactly. Yeah. But I try to remember that. That's an interesting story because I remember when I lived in Colorado, I remember coming back from somewhere and I was driving home and I had NPR and they were playing the music from the Sorcerer's Apprentice. And the DJ had researched it. And I thought the comments was real interesting is that in the original story, the sorcerer was not upset with the apprentice at all. They were just like, oh, okay, no big deal, because they knew how to handle it. So I think that's kind of like analogous to Holy Spirit. You know, it's like Holy Spirit doesn't care one bit how flooded our mind is with ego, because he knows that the eventual outcome will be, you know, serenity. And that nothing could have happened in a dream that could have changed anything. Yeah. Anyway, I never heard that before, or again since. But I just thought that was a neat commentary on that story. Yeah. So even though we had one job and we keep blowing it, at some point we'll stop blowing it and we'll say that was silly, and for all this, you know, we gave up nothing. You know. Yeah.
I was thinking about one of the big ways, and I would assume this is true for men and women, that the world, we feel victimized by the world is, I didn't have the career I was supposed to have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the circumstances kept me from it, or, you know, I couldn't be the opera singer or the dancer or the ballet person or the whatever it was that I thought I should, I'm the musician or whatever I could have been, I should have been. The world kept me from it.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
But victimized by somebody robbing me of the career I deserved or needed or wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The inevitable finger pointing that, yeah.
And then the resentment, the ongoing resentment, like you approach every job from that point of view to that. Right.
Mm-hmm. Even now, I think about, you know, projects that I was so invested in at work that never saw the light of day. You know, you'd work on a software hardware project for a year or 2 or 3, and then somebody in upper management decides, no, we're not doing that. Go to the next thing. And so, but I poured my heart and soul, and so did these other dozen people, you know, into this thing. And I'm thinking of one in particular. It was called Conference Maker. And now the irony is, right now at this very moment, we're using something that was equivalent to what that was trying to be, but now is like a gazillion times better. We call it Zoom, you know. Yeah. Anyway, that was a couple of decades ago. Anyway, it's just kind of fun to see all the things that, you know, we get upset about, and then in retrospect, you know, with a little maturity, we realize, well, gee, you know, we you know, ended up okay after all, right? Yeah. Any other comments on the first paragraph? Do you have something, Stephen?
I was listening to what it was, the meaning of the Holy Instant CD, Wapnick CD yesterday, and he said we don't realize what Jesus was really saying here, and what he's really saying, Wapnick says, is that we think we have needs in this world, and in truth, we have no needs in this world. And when we read that in that way, it doesn't mean I do nothing. It means that I need do nothing. There are no needs that have to be performed.
Yeah.
And if we look at the the practical aspect of the course, it's that way in every way that Jesus tells us how to practice this. You know, we look at whatever the situation is and we say, what is it for? And then we step back and just let it happen. And ego comes in with all kinds of reasons and needs, and well, I better make that call, or I better drive over there, or I better say this or that, when there are no needs at all. And just now, right before I started talking, I realized that that other CD that he had, Tyranny of Needs, that's what that whole CD is about. It's letting us know that anytime we think we have a need, we're an ego. And that's one of the ways that we can look at ego and watch for ego as we go along. If I think anything's important, I'm an ego. So I have to step back and just let it all happen. And good luck with that. Still working on it myself.
I think we're pretty much all in that boat. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right? Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, that Tyranny of Needs is such a great program, and just, you know, good, like you say, it's so important to just notice when we think that we have a need and just say, well, I don't have to change my behavior necessarily. I can still be doing the stuff in the world that I'd be doing anyway. But when I do it with Holy Spirit, it's like I can have a more relaxed attitude about it. It's like, well, I can actually, you know, begin to consider that the outcome isn't nearly as important as my frame of mind while I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and just you know, enjoying it without investing my identity in it. Yeah.
I was thinking of two of the big benefits, if you will, from the ego's point of view of believing I have a need. Is it, well, first it proves I'm obviously a body. Bodies have needs, psychological, physical, emotional, etc. But even more importantly, I think, in terms of guilt, it's all the people that are standing in the way of my needs being fulfilled. So that, I mean, it's an immediate guilt pointer, like who's keeping me from getting what I need, how much I need, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, it's gigantic in that sense. That's the real tyranny, is it keeps making me a victim of everybody else standing in the way of my needs being fulfilled.
Yeah. It's that web of specialness and neediness that you know, holds the whole fabric of ego's insanity together, isn't it? Yeah. Javiera?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Hi. So this is sounds pretty cool, but honestly, how can I apply this? I mean, yeah, I can identify as an ego, as a body, as a mom, and I can see needs. I have some needs. So every time that I have a need, whatever need it is, I'm in ego mode. So there's no need with the Holy Spirit that could be justified, or I don't know. How can I apply these?
That's a really good question. I think maybe it's in the like the phrase "I need do nothing," and the emphasis on need, meaning like there's an anxiety or like you know, attention, or it's kind of like in that needy state of mind is where it's almost like what Tim was talking about. We're just kind of like begging, you know, like what the cartoon character, I dare you, I say, I double dare you to cross that line, you know. and we need the world to double cross us so that we have you know, a cause for our upset.
So
for identity.
What?
Yeah, like yeah.
We need it for our identity, and that's when we have a need that to make ourselves whole with some outside situation or some relationship or something like that, then that's totally coming from ego, and those are the kinds of needs that we need to hand over to the Holy Spirit. We're always going to have, you know, we're going to have physical needs. We need to breathe. We need to eat. We need to do those things. But I think the needs we're talking about here are needs of our ego. That I think I'm right. Does anybody else have a comment on that?
It seems like it's the principle of neediness, I think, is really what's being addressed here. Yeah.
It's like different between I need for you to do something in my way, or I want, or I would like if you behave in this way. I don't need that.
Mhm.
It would be nice, but they are coming both from the ego. I mean, I would like that you behave in that way is a beautiful way to say, I need you behave in that way. So they are both coming, even if I need something or I want something.
Mhm.
So what is the point? I don't have any need, emotional need. So that's being in my Holy Spirit mode. I don't need someone to behave in that way, in a specific way, or any event to be in specific way, so I can be happy anyway, no matter the outcome. But that is not realistic.
I think
Yeah.
Sally has an answer, or at least a comment or a question, right?
Well, so what do I need? I really need the peace of God. That will carry me through everything. Yeah, we will take care of our body's needs. We will, we'll pay the rent. We'll, make the car payment. We'll go grocery shopping. We'll do things that our body needs because we can't deny that we have them. But our real need is the peace while we are doing all that, paying the bills, grocery shopping. We need to have the peace of God, and we need to remember we are not guilty. I was listening to Ken Wapnick weeding the garden today a little bit, and he says the atonement is the release from our guilt. So what I need to do is release myself from the guilt or the residue of guilt that I carry around with me, and that guilt is the attachment to the ego. So I need to, if I want the peace of God, I need to remember to go to the Holy Spirit and ask to see things differently, and to choose not to go to guilt over my needs. I think. I mean, this is sort of what's been rattling around as I've been listening to everybody, and listening to Ken today kind of helped. Because right now I'm kind of, I finally accomplished what I wanted to do. I don't know if it was probably part ego, part my holy self. I'm not sure, but so I was looking. Where am I going to put my attention? And I'm going to put my attention on forgiveness and the release of guilt. Maybe I'll paint a picture about it. I don't know how I'll do it, but I'll put my attention on peace. That's what I want. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's real important, Sally. Just, where we put our attention. Yeah. And it also seems like when I am more peaceful on those occasions, I notice that the big dealness and my insistence and stress about whether something happens or doesn't happen, at least is diminished, if not gone in that moment. And maybe that is helpful, Javier. I know it's a big question because we're so steeped in ego most of the time that, I mean, the idea of having a non-needy experience is like what asking a fish about, high altitude mountaineering. They probably don't have much clue of what that's about. But that's our real nature, but we're so far removed from that in most of our
we need
thinking.
to survive. We have bodies. We do need to survive, but we can have some peace as we're doing that.
Yeah, I think it's in that chew gum and walk category of the course asks us to consider. Maybe we could actually, with practice, and admittedly a lot of practice, do what we're going to do in the world, but hold that presence of the Holy Spirit in our mind as important, and just say, Holy Spirit, I don't know how to have peace on my own, but I know that there's that place in the mind that we share where that's not only possible, but inevitable. And I'm willing to hang in there and find that. And even just that little willingness, I think, kind of opens that door in our mind a little bit. Yeah. Someone else had a comment or question.
Stephen has.
Stephen? Okay, yeah.
What Tim tells us about this, Wapnick tells us about this, Jesus tells us about this. I think it's in the text. I heard about this about a year or two ago. Jesus says, give me your minutia. In other words, brushing my teeth, changing the diaper, making the food for the family. I mean, the next thing and how do we do that? Tim says, take Jesus with you. And Tim says, you need to be prayed up. And Jesus says in the course, he says, if you're uncertain about any particular situation, what do I want to come from this? And then you go to what Sally said. I want peace and truth. And then you let it go and you do the next right thing. And when I say you, that's the generic you, and I'm talking to myself with this, so I can kind of remind myself of all these things I just said so that I can do this. But when I go through all those things I just said, it comes out perfect every time. Every time, you sure? Yeah, I checked it. Comes out perfect every time if you do all of that. But I forget it almost all the time. That's the whole problem with that.
Isn't there a box of rice that had that ad years ago? It comes out perfect every time. Uncle Ben's, maybe.
Uncle Ben's.
Uncle Ben, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's back with us. Talk to him every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when Javier asked the question about, well, even if I say to you, I would prefer that you do it this way, or I want you to do it this way, or worse, I need. I remember I was delivering packages one day back in Maryland, and I went kind of driving fast up into this lady's driveway, and she came out, and this is totally behavioral, but it really frames it for me. She said, do me a favor, please don't drive too fast when you come into the driveway because I have dogs. But she framed it as, do me a favor, like, give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. Do me a favor. I love that. I started using that a lot. Like when I wanted to pray, I didn't say out loud, like, do me a favor, do this or that, or I'll kill you. I didn't say that part. That was more than implied. But do me a favor, it was kind of a nice, sweet way of saying. The other thing is the every word in this section of I need do nothing, every word in that title is so loaded. So, like in classes before, we've taken it apart. You start with the I. Well, who's the I that doesn't need anything? And then the need is that desperation part. I mean, obviously bodies are desperate. They have to breathe, they have to eat, they have to sleep. And then the do part. And then the nothing. Why didn't he say I need do anything? Why do you say nothing? I mean, no thing. Everything's no thing. Everything's no thing. I mean, it's kind of wild the way he phrased it.
The whole metaphysical system. I'm grinning, Tim, because this evening, before an hour or so ago, I was making some salads for dinner and listening to NPR, which I frequently do, and they had a little short segment on mental health. And today apparently is National Mental Health Day, and I was flashing on a bumper sticker that my dad had on his Bronco years ago, which said, "Support mental health or I'll kill you." That's kind of funny. but that's basically the two options. We either support Holy Spirit's view of things, or what's not love is murder. But we're so accustomed to tolerating the ego's dream of murder. It's just a dream, but we it's a socially acceptable dream, not physically necessarily, but mentally. The mental suicides and homicides that take place moment to moment. and just like, okay, well, I need to be more sensitive to that and try to do things like what you're talking about, Tim, with the lady in the driveway, and just like, how can I pitch this so that I remind myself and everyone I'm interacting with that it's a preference, but I can be at peace with whatever happens and still share what I would prefer, but not, make it a life or death matter kind of thing, or birth or death matters, I like to say sometimes. Yeah, good stuff. I mean, but yeah, it's challenging, isn't it? I mean, but I think we're all that the happy news that the course suggests is that we've all graduated from this classroom and looking at our needs and looking at our mad careers and anyway, should we read some, Lisa?
Why I keep thinking about what Myra said on Saturday that just was kind of like really helped me. She said that she gave the distinction between denying the body and not identifying with the body.
Yeah, that's
And
huge.
I
Isn't it?
just find that so helpful because it's not,
Mhm.
we don't deny the body, we
Mhm.
don't identify with it, we disidentify with it.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
it's like a different way of framing it for me, in that
Mhm.
I don't have to invest in the body,
Yeah.
other than, yeah, there's certain things that we do for the body to keep it healthy or whatever,
Mhm.
but it's not who we are, you know.
It's a gentle surreality, isn't it? It's like we
Yeah,
notice how surreal
yeah,
the world is, not in any kind of like, not like we're disconnected, but we're just actually so connected that there's nothing specific, that it's a big deal, and the big dealness kind of drains the big dealness out of things.
right.
Yeah, or as the
And I
Beatles
think
said, nothing to get hung about, right?
it's important to remember too that the body, at least the way Ken Wapnick describes it, it's not just the physical body, it's the psychological body, it's all of the stories and the
Mhm.
misperceptions and all of that stuff that we
Yep.
bring,
Yeah.
that whole thought system. So
A grab bag of ego, body, identity, thought system, right? Yeah.
I have a paddock of it.
I think we have at least all have at least a galactic accumulation of it, but fortunately, it's a made up galaxy, right?
Yeah, it's interesting looking at it, from
Yeah.
that viewpoint of looking at it without denying it, but yet not identifying as that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm describing it very well. I'm not good.
I think very well. I think
Okay.
it seemed like another cliche is, in the world but not of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, certainly we all get denying the body at this point makes it real. If I deny
Exactly.
something that is real that I need to deny.
Mm-hmm.
However, I was trying to imagine going up to somebody, or somebody asked me for something, and I say to them, well, I'm not denying you that, whatever it is you're asking me to do. I just don't identify with you as a body. Yeah, that goes over.
Yeah. Caution advised. Javiera?
Yeah, this is good. So if I don't identify with my body, how can I identify in this world? Practically, I mean, if someone asks me, what do you do, or who are you?
You can still deliver the elevator speech, right? I mean, yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I think it seems like that little inner smile that says, yeah, I'm telling this story, but I know there's more than that.
Yeah.
I remember about a decade ago, I think I might have shared this before. I had some friends from Nevada that were visiting that I got to meet when I was sharing some stuff at a conference in Arizona. And I stayed with them on my way back to California, where I lived at the time. And so they came to visit a month or two later, and I was touring them around the Northern California foothills where I lived and showing them all these places. And I was hearing myself telling them these stories about things I'd done and what happened on all these places. And it wasn't like I was totally bored to tears. I was just kind of watching this stuff come out of my mouth. And it was like, why would anyone be interested in any of this? And it wasn't like a put down of my history. It was just kind of like, wow, there's so much there's so much more. And yet because I have this myopic vision about my identity, what else can I share? And it was kind of like I was compassionate for them and myself at that moment, realizing, how temporary and ephemeral and constrained all these little stories were about this character named Bruce. And it wasn't like I was belittling myself. It was just saying, well, everyone's story is a drop in that ocean kind of thing. But it was appropriate for me to share that little droplet story, that at that time. Yeah. Anyway, it was just kind of like this little moment of surreality, I guess. Lisa?
I had this funny thought that, it's like I'm at a party and somebody asks me what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I could say, oh, I bring all my dark thoughts to the Holy Spirit. I mean, how would I go over that party?
And have that on your business card, right? So you can pull that out. Bringer of dark thoughts to Holy Spirit, right? Yeah.
Chief forgiveness
Officer?
officer, yeah.
CFO, there you go. Yeah, I like it.
Chief forgiveness officer, there you go.
That's good. That's good. I might have to use that one. Any other thoughts before we move on? This is good discussion. How about Beth? Would you like to read number 2, paragraph 2? I think we only got through the first paragraph, didn't we? Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
There is one thing that you have never done. You have not utterly forgotten the body. It has perhaps faded at times from your sight, but it has not yet completely disappeared. You are not asked to let this happen for more than an instant, yet it is in this instant that the miracle of atonement happens. Afterwards, you will see the body again, but never quite the same. And every instant that you spend without awareness of it gives you a different view of it when you return. Javier, I think about that a lot too. And I think for me, the most last thing I think that happened is that I discovered forgiveness as defined by the Course. And for some reason, I just used it as often as I could. I remember listening to Ken Wapnick say, somebody asked him in the audience, well, what is it you actually do? And he says, you watch every thought. And if it's a bad thought, or if it's a thought that causes you a negative reaction, then you forgive it. And so I heard that real early on. And so I kind of latched onto that. And I really had no idea what the Course was talking about at all at that time, but I was able to do that. I think I can do that. And after about 10 months of doing that, and sometimes I would get up at 6 a.m, and by 10, I would have forgiven 100 times. And I realized, wow, I have a lot of bad stuff in my mind. I mean, I didn't really know that. I didn't know I had all that bad stuff, but I did. And reacting to things that were happening in the external world. But so again, after 10 months, I really didn't know what the Course was saying, but I started feeling better. And it was, to me, kind of remarkable because I had never really felt good. And so I thought, well, gosh, maybe I'll start reading the book and find out what the book says, because if this is what if this is what forgiveness is, and it has helped me as much as it has after 10 months of doing it, the book obviously must have some better stuff in it. It must be something I should be interested in. And so now it's been 3 years, but I tell you, I wake up in the morning and I think of atonement. And I define it for myself. I talk to Jesus. And I forgive every time something comes into my mind. It's not really a hard thing to do. It's not, I don't feel like I've changed my life tremendously. I still do all the same things. I don't do anything really different in that regard. Mm-hmm. But I am very focused on atonement. I'm focused on spirit, and forgiveness. And it's different. It's weird. And I was thinking Bruce, when you were talking about explaining those things to those people that came to visit, I've been in that same situation because my story is no longer relevant. And I didn't purposely try to get rid of my story. I think it's just through forgiveness. My story then became irrelevant. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. And Myra said at one time, it's above my pay grade. And I'm great with that. If it's up here and I don't need to know it, I'm not going to put forth any effort to know it, because it's like, why? But I do know that watching all my thoughts, for some reason, I heard Ken say, and it's just like maybe 30 seconds into that, 11-hour seminar that I listened to, that 30 seconds really was very significant for me. So, but again, that's all I do. And it just sort of happens. I don't know why. It's above my pay grade. I don't want to know why. And so anyways, but I love the word atonement. I don't know how many times it says it in the book. I'm sure it's just zillions of them, but to me, that's the message. Atonement is the goal, and forgiveness is how you achieve it. So anyways, thanks.
Thank you, Beth. It's a mere 258 times in the course. Not as many as I thought, but it's still a good number. And I think your comment is so right on, because it does seem like, we can use a lot of different words to try to describe it, but the course's formula, if you want to call it that, or for our careers, our function, our task, our assignment, is to just watch our thoughts with Holy Spirit and notice when we want to condemn ourselves, and then use other people as the the scapegoats, very typically, and then just say, oh, well, what if I stop doing that? What if I chose to not do that? And it's like, oh, that could change everything. And then on those moments when we actually hit the pause button on the condemnation and the judging, it's like, oh, this is actually kind of nice. I might have to try this more often. Which is why I like these classes and groups so much, because it reminds me that, oh yeah, I really could do this more often. So anyway, that's why I'm here.
I was thinking about Halloween, and especially in terms of what Beth was saying. So, I mean, the first step of forgiveness is all about, I put a costume on you. I call you the Antichrist. And then the second step of forgiveness is I take that costume back, and then I put it on me. I say, I'm the Antichrist. And then the third step of forgiveness is I just take off the costume, and what's left? Well, that's what being is. I just stop pretending you're something you're not, and I stop pretending I'm something I'm not. And there's no more pretending going on. That, I mean, it's not like we have to choose a new identity. We just have to stop kind of pretending, each of us, and ourselves especially, we're not this Halloween creature, this toxic waste dump that we think we are. Ooh, what would that look like as a costume?
3 Mile Island. It's Chernobyl or something.
A garbage can.
Yeah, really. Yeah, Oscar the Grouch, is that it? Yeah. Good stuff. So meanwhile, let's see, where were we?
I think Sally had something else.
Oh yes, thank you, Sally.
I was just going to blurt out, we have to remember our true identity. We are innocent, and we are spirit. We are totally innocent, eternal spirit, and not the clutching, grabbing ego.
You mean we're not all Gollum or Smeagol with a little bit nicer facade?
You're a holy son of God. I just saw a guy today at the store, and I just gave him the holy son of God thought, and he smiled. Okay, maybe. Then if he's a holy son of God, so am I. That reminds me,
Hag, we're all in, huh? Thanks, Sally. Wait, Sally, would you like to read the third paragraph?
Okay, sure. At no single instant does the body exist at all. Let me get my thing here. It is always remembered or anticipated, but never experienced just now. Only its past and future make it seem real. Time controls it entirely, for sin is never wholly in the present. Sin is lack of love. So the lack of love is never wholly in the present. In any single instant, the attraction of guilt would be experienced as pain and nothing else, and would be avoided. It has no attraction now. Its whole attraction is imaginary, and therefore must be thought of in the past or in the future. And guilt is always of the past, isn't it? So that's the thing that Ken was saying today in the CD I was listening to, is that the atonement is release from guilt. So when we get a little guilty thought running through our mind, we can forgive it by remembering it's in the past, it's over with, and we are here now as eternal spirit, Holy Son of God. So that's helpful. And if we go to that quiet center, then we can release ourselves and enter into peace. Well, the quiet center is where the Holy Spirit abides in our mind. So if we can go to that place of release from the guilt that is not true. It's gone. It's in the past. Anyway, I'll quit rambling here.
No, that's so right on. In fact, the end of this section ends with a wonderful reminder of staying in that quiet center.
I forgot to comment on that first sentence in paragraph 2. Like the first half of it, I got all excited. Like, there's one thing that you've never done. And I'm like, oh, what is that, Jesus? I'm going to put that on my bucket list. And then he tells me, and it's like, oh, I don't, never, that's all right.
So places in the world you want to visit, and then let's see, I'll visit the idea that I've never utterly forgotten the body. Oh, well, yeah, well, okay. So much for that one, huh? I was also thinking about, those sensory deprivation tanks, the flotation tanks, where I think they put you in like a salt bath. I've never done it, but I can kind of imagine, just, I did do something kind of close to that years ago when I was an engineering student at UC Davis in California. They had, in the engineering, they had an anechoic chamber that had all these little alternating foam panels that look like little triangular prisms. Anyway, but it was on all 4 walls, the ceiling, and then the floor as well. And then there's like a mesh, a metal mesh that you walked out on. So it was all the sound was completely absorbed. And I remember I asked the guy who, and mostly they use that for testing equipment, to make sure that if, the acoustics and radio and different electromagnetic spectrum kind of stuff testing, but, vibration testing, all kinds of stuff like that. But I remember that was in the era when, meditation was starting to become, something that people were interested in. So I said, well, I'm kind of interested in just meditating in that for a couple of minutes. The guy kind of gave me a funny look, saying, well, okay, sure, go ahead. And so I got to go in this anechoic chamber, and I remember it was just unimaginably quiet. And after a minute or two, I was like, I could hear the blood circulating in my ears. That was the only sound I could hear. And it was just like super quiet and super dark, of course, but that completely forgetting the body. Well, if you're still thinking about, oh, I'm this body, then it's not, that's obviously wants us to go farther than that. Yeah. Lisa?
I think later on where he says, you are not asked to let this happen for more than an instant. Yet it is in this instant that the miracle of atonement happens. Afterwards, you will see the body again, but never quite the same. That's, to me, my experience. I don't see it the same.
Yeah, I think when we have those moments where we really feel a connection, with each other, or we just kind of are so truly, I don't know how to describe it, but just, there's a piece that happens, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess my body was here, but I don't remember. It's like the preoccupation just totally drops away. Yeah. And I think it doesn't take too many of those to kind of remind us. It's like, well, this is all made up. We made up this whole thing, including the body. Stephen?
Yeah, that's the miracle. That's the holy instant.
Yeah.
That's true forgiveness. That's
Yeah.
that's atonement. That atonement that just kind of comes by for a moment. You not only do we completely forget about the body, and I think everyone on earth does this. I think we all have holy instants. We just don't recognize them at the time, and they tend to go by. But we completely forget about everything. It just happens, and we're in that moment that peace that passeth all understanding. And when Tim read that sentence a few minutes ago, I said, "No, that's not true, Jesus. I don't know if you should have put that in there, because but he's just being kind. We do I had one of these yesterday. Everything goes away completely, and then like you go, what happened? And then all of a sudden ego's back, and you're back looking at that again. But I think we often have times, not often, but anytime there's any kind of miracle or true perception, there's no body, there's nothing there. There's only mind, and we remember that, and we remember what we are. Maybe just for a few minutes or a few seconds, or sometimes for longer than that. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And that is, then that motivates us to, continue to, to question the ego's mad career, and just say, well, what if I could do that more often? Yeah. And just, and there's a gentleness and a patience and an ease and a calm to that.
I was thinking about that, my need to reiterate my story, and especially the moments I thought were, it sounds like it's not a bad thing. However, what made those moments very special was in that moment, I was in the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that. And it was, I was experiencing something for the first time that I hadn't allowed myself to have that. And it usually involves other people. So it doesn't have to, but it could.
Mm-hmm.
And then I build an alter to that in my brain. And then I have to tell you about that experience, which is totally denying that we could have that right this second.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm so preoccupied with building that altar to the past that I don't know I can have a here and now right this second, every second.
Mm-hmm.
And then have a moment like Stephen had. Like everything just fades away.
Couple things come to mind as you're sharing that, Tim. Is one is I remember dabbling with biofeedback machines a few decades ago, and they had this little alpha machine that would let you listen to the predominant frequencies that your brain was generating with the little electrodes kind of thing, a little thing you put in your ear. And I remember, at one point I was like, oh, so that's what the alpha rhythm is. I had this little warbling tone about 10 cycles per second. And I began to recognize that, it's actually kind of very calm, alert state. And then I realized, I can do that without the gadget, because I just go to that place in my mind, and then the brain would then follow suit, kind of thing. And then another thing that kind of related to it is, 30 years ago, I guess it was coming up next month, was in the what they call a king's chamber in the Great Pyramid, and toning inside this granite box, and I sounded like this 1,000-voice choir was singing through me because all the acoustics and everything. It was really cool. It was kind of a neat mystical sort of experience. And I was, well, wait a minute, I don't need this structure. I don't have to go to Egypt to do this. I could do this anywhere. It's like it's a state of mind. And then I guess the third one is, and I've shared this before, when my wife went off to work in California for about 1.5 years, the morning that she was about to leave, I realized, and she was still asleep in bed next to me a foot away. It's like I was missing her already, because I knew she was going to be gone for months at a time, and we got together every so often, but I was missing her, and it's like, wait a minute, where does she exist? It can't be the body I'm thinking about. It's got to be my thoughts about her that I was making a misunderstanding a big deal. Yeah. anyway, but yeah, it always gets back to the mind, doesn't it? I mean, the decision of the mind. Yep.
Stephen had another comment there.
Yeah. No. Okay. Okay.
David Byrne has this, I don't know if he's doing it all over the country. David Byrne, head of the Talking Heads,
Yeah.
leader of the Talking Heads. He's got this thing in Denver called Theater of the Mind.
Yeah.
And he walks you through episodes in his life and the way he saw them from that point of view. So at one point, you go from room to room, and basically it's his funeral. So we're kind of reliving his story. It was really clever. It was scientific. It was really well done. It was worth it. It was fun he's really talking about theater of the brain, but it was fun watching and going through this process of seeing his life. So at one point you go into the kitchen and everything is gigantic, as if you were 5 years old looking up at the chair. It was really some really good stuff that he had going on.
Giant cookie jar just out of reach, right?
And you're doing this in a small group. So, and then they put you in a room where it's totally quiet. They turn out all the lights, not a fraction of a light anywhere. And then they flash a light in your face. Boy, does that freak everybody out. Yeah. They warn you ahead of time. This isn't going to kill you, but it's going to be pretty freaky. And then you start seeing things like crazy. Everybody's silhouette lights up. But I mean, it's too bad he didn't take it, to the next level. The theater of the mind, as in there's something else going on besides what's going on in David's brain. But it was really clever. It was really well done, and it certainly walked you through somebody's story. Yeah. So
that's pretty cool.
So I don't know if it's going to go from here around the country, or maybe he's already doing it in different parts of the country. But I'd recommend it just to see how the brain works, I think.
Neat. Well, check it out. Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the clock. I was thinking, well, how about if we read one more paragraph and then we can jump down to a conclusion? Let's see. Sally, would you like to read the next paragraph?
4, right?
Uh-huh.
It is impossible to accept the holy instant without reservation unless, just for an instant, you're willing to see no past or future. You cannot prepare for it without placing it in the future. Release is given you the instant you desire it. Many have spent a lifetime in preparation and have indeed achieved their instance of success. This course does not attempt to teach more than they learned in time, but it does aim at saving time. You may be attempting to follow a very long road to the goal you have accepted. It is extremely difficult to reach atonement by fighting against sin. Enormous effort is expended in the attempt to make holy what is hated and despised. Nor is a lifetime of contemplation and long periods of meditation aimed at detachment from the body necessary. All such attempts will ultimately succeed because of their purpose, yet the means are tedious and very time-consuming, for all of them look to the future for release from a state of present unworthiness and inadequacy. It's interesting. Fighting against sin or guilt isn't going to work, but the release is present if we will just decide that we are worthy and we are adequate. We are not the sinners that we have been told that we are. We're totally innocent. And
Exactly.
that's how we accept the atonement, I think.
Yeah, and it's not the mad career that we've made of trying to make our ego holy, or trying to make a separate self work, or trying to make an identity that is separate from, creation and each other and our creator, somehow resolve itself, because that's, we know on some level, consciously or unconsciously, that's not going to work. But the worthiness that we all want and know is our real identity has nothing to do with those stories or those mad careers of yarns that we keep spinning about a self that we made up. And beyond that, there's infinite worth, and it's a worth that we all share, and we don't have to earn it or learn it. That's a phrase I heard from a friend of mine years ago. I really like it. It's nothing, our intrinsic worth, we don't have to earn or learn. I really like that a lot. And that's that still place in our mind that this all was there. Sally?
I think the only thing we need to do is go to love, and go to the love within, rather than do something.
Yeah.
Whatever the ego thinks I should do. If I just go to love, I will do whatever needs to be done and not have to worry about anything, but be the love that is within me.
Yeah, and we're all drawn to that love inexorably and irresistibly. And so in order to get to it, we have to be willing to look at, like Tim was saying, the Halloween costumes that we've all put on, that we call our personas and our bodies, and just say, there's nothing there. Like Ken Wapnick says, not only is there no clothes, there's no emperor. There's no body and there's no thought system. That they both are made up, and the surreality of that becomes apparent when we look without condemning, and do that often enough that just like, oh yeah, I could do this more often. I could see peace instead of this.
I was thinking as you were saying that I don't even have to take the costume off. I just have to realize it's a costume.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And it's quite an elaborate one, isn't it? Yeah, we've gone to great lengths to disguise our real identity and make up, whether it's a 7-page resume or a 7 million year gazillion trillion whatever story, that it's like, if it's about something that's different than everything else, it's made up. It's got to be made up. Well, I think I'm going to skip down to the bottom of this section, since Sally already kind of gave us a sneak preview in what she was describing, and we can use this paragraph 8 as a closing meditation.
It was just a lucky guess.
Oh, you were just reading Jesus's mind, Sally. You know it. Yeah. Okay. So if you want to sit back and relax, and we'll just let this soak in. Yet there will always be this place of rest to which you can return. And you will be more aware of this quiet center of the storm than all its raging activity. This quiet center, in which you do nothing, will remain with you, giving you rest in the midst of every busy doing on which you are sent. For from the center will you be directed how to use the body sinlessly. It is this center from which the body is absent that will keep it so in your awareness of it. Okay. so we can focus on that center in our mind where Holy Spirit tells us everything we need to know about a real career of forgiveness, moment to moment.
Right.
Just gently practice that throughout the week.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you all.
Bruce. Thank you, everybody.
What I needed to hear.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. That was good. Thank you.
It was a good class.
Take
Excellent.
care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, y'all.
Yeah.
Night.
Have a peaceful evening.
Now it will be.
Yes.